This sitting is resumed. Honourable Member for the City.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise really to give my support to this resolution this afternoon and really to underscore our ability to get the job done. The Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest went back to 2019 in his contribution. I, sir, remember in the early 20s, as a young boy in that area, discussions about using that farmland for positivity, youth engagement, farming, and the such. And that is why I want to take this opportunity, sir, to congratulate all the persons who had anything to do to bringing this to this stage this afternoon. Mr. Speaker, this is about getting the job done. Mr. Speaker, a community in urban Barbados will now be given the opportunity to engage on about 3.4 acres of land. And to be able to bring development to themselves, to the community, and to this nation. This is about urban regeneration. This is about urban farming. And sir, I am also happy to see something. We are in the process of transformation. We are part of an administration that we are engaging with the people in communities, and the Minister of Housing spoke about it, where he went to the community and he got some string beans. So we move from a time where we are dealing with people and having strings attached to working with communities and being able to get string beans without strings attached, sir. That is part of the transformation that we are seeing even in our society today, even if we don't understand it. Getting the job done, sir. Sir, this is also about the Sustainable Development Goals. It speaks to a number of them, but I underscore this afternoon SDG 11, which speaks about cities and dwellings and ensuring that they are inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. And no one can deny, if they understand that this community agricultural project, now to be done in the Deacons Road area, helps with the having social inclusion for our people. One of the social determinants of crime have been underscored as social exclusion. People not feeling a part of the society and hence participating in crime or anything else is not a bother for them because they are not a part of your society. You have your society, you have your rules, your norms, and within their subculture, they have theirs. But as we vest this land and give the opportunity to persons in that community to be included in our programs, we add to being inclusive and being one again. Once community members, particularly in vulnerable communities, can be involved, it adds to safety. Because, sir, I can tell you that if the community is involved in the project, whether it be agriculture or whatever, that project is safe. No one can steal from that. No one can vandalize that because it is theirs. And they have the ownership of that project, sir. I think the point on being resilient is self-explanatory, and the point of being sustainable. Therefore, I am happy that we have gotten this job done. It is about getting the job done. Not talking about it alone, not putting it in a manifesto alone, but getting it to Parliament and getting the job done. Sir, this is also about the most important aspect of our work in this chamber. This is about people. People, people. People over politics. This is what this is about. So you see, this went from Jenkinsville, Italy, to the crown, to the state under our republic, to the BADMC, to the people. You see the road that we've taken, the path. Jenkinsville, Italy, to crown land, to state land. Again, putting the Ministry of Housing in there, to BADMC, to the people of Black Rock. To the people. That is what is important. That is what I underscore. That is what I underline, Mr. Speaker. But as I move on, sir, very important in getting the job done is what does this project really mean for the people? This is about empowerment. Empowerment of the people. A project such as this, a project that I support, a project that I've advocated for a very long time, it ticks so many boxes that you may need a second page, sir. Jobs or micro businesses, skills and training, a sense of purpose for those involved in the project, self-esteem and self-worth. I don't just have to lie. I am just not a nobody, but I am now involved in whatever you care to call the project at the end of the day. I am a participant. We talk about active citizenship. This, sir, is this active citizenship? Yes or no? I say yes. What do you say, sir? So it ticks the box of food security, as in having food, and food security of knowing what is in the food. Because when you grow a food, sir, and you eat that food, you have a certain degree of certainty of what the food is. Is it GMO? Did it come from a lab? No, it came from the ground in Rosemont. It came from the ground in the city of Brashaw. It came from Lears. It came from Mount Hoyle. Therefore, sir, I know what is in it. And that when I eat it, sir, I know what I am eating. And when it decides to pass, sir, I know what is passing. And that is what is important when we talk about food security and food sovereignty. When we throw around these terms, the people of Barbados, the people of this nation, must understand the importance of these terms. Food sovereignty. When we look at what is happening across the world, the volatile nature of the world today, will the ships be able to dock every day? Will the planes be able to land or want to land every day? And every time one of these projects are launched, sir, I sleep a little better knowing that if or when the day comes that we know that we have additional food security and food sovereignty in this nation. It also takes the block box, sir, of pride. Pride in your community, to know that I am part of something in the community. Over the last few weeks, last few months, I spent time in that very area with the MP for St. Michael Northwest. And I saw the community garden project that he should be proud to know that he led and he leads today. And I saw the need for more land, because all the land is cultivating and all the land is producing. And I saw pride by the members of that community in that project. So they have pride and they can work and sell, so they have industry. And I don't know if anybody, when the last time we heard those words placed together, something called pride and industry that can come out of that project, sir. So that is why I have commended the Ministry of Agriculture and Housing, the senior minister who cannot be left out, the member for St. Michael Northwest, and the Prime Minister for getting this job done. But sir, all the boxes are not ticked. We have some more boxes left, sir. The environment, sir. So we can have bush, rodents and rats and mosquitoes breeding, or we can have food planting. The environment. And I want to go to the psychological part of the environment. You are where you live. You are the type of environment that you live in. So if you live in an untidy, unkempt place versus if you live in a place of beauty, natural beauty, the mind and the psychology operates two different levels. So inside of the psychiatric hospital, we have them improving the mental well-being of the persons in there. And now on the outside of the psychiatric hospital, we have a project improving the mental health of the persons on the outside as well. That is why I feel so passionate about this project and why I commend this project, sir. Sir, I can go to the financial and economic now. When we talk about agricultural projects, 3.4 more acres of food production, which helps with the food import bill, which helps with saving little foreign exchange. So we can take those boxes in the positive column as well in this project. And I see the Minister of Agriculture smiling brightly, so I believe I am on the right track, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to take a couple more boxes when we talk about green space, nature therapy, but ultimately community spirit. We get in our places a public broadcast and in private conversations and say, you know what we need in this country? We need to bring back community spirit. Sir, this is a tangible example of bringing back community spirit. As community members work together on this project. So it is no longer a lot of laba or a lot of long talk, but you have a project now where communities can work together and thrive together. So I want to take the box also of exercise and NCDs, because getting out there and working, you know, getting that blood flow, getting that cardio, helps with NCDs. So if anybody, for my short few remarks on this resolution, would want to recognize that if they look across the front bench, you would recognize that this particular project touches on a number of your ministries and a number of your portfolios. And if you think that someone is left out, let me add in tourism. The ecotourism, community tourism. What the member for St. Michael Northwest should tell the chamber is that the Bajan bus is passed on by him. And the tourists get an opportunity to sample some of the produce down there. And the tourists love it. And it is something that we need to expand, because when the tourists travel, the research and the exit surveys are telling us, sir, that they want to see what the locals are doing. They want to be involved with what the locals are involved in. And that open bus, Bajan bus, passing through a number of places, including Deacons Road, can now get the opportunity for an additional stop to be able to roast some breadfruits and to walk with some fresh, organic string beans, no strings attached. This is yet another box that we have ticked in a single project that looks like a simple vesting of land, but can really be a revolutionary project, sir. I am sure the Minister of Labor is wondering now, where is his box? So I bring you to his box, sir. Because one of the things that you would notice when you speak to a number of young people and not so young people, I was speaking to a number of them in prison recently, sir. And one of the fearful things for me is that we have people in this country in their late 20s, their early 30s. They come to you and they ask you for some employment. And they usually ask the question, where was your last place of employment? Sir, Mr. Speaker, they never worked yet. Never worked yet. So that distance between leaving school and getting their first employment opportunity have been lost somewhere along the line. So when they do get into the labor market, sir, they're not prepared. They're not accustomed. They're not getting up. They don't have that thing about getting up and getting ready, sir. And I believe that these projects bring a level of discipline that allows people to thrive more in employment, in microbusiness, small business, or entrepreneurship. And that is why, sir, I had to stand and say a few words to support this project. But, sir, all the boxes are not ticked as yet. A few more to tick. You see, respect is a major part of projects like these. And that's why I have respect for it. When you can get up and get involved in projects like these, you have respect for self. As you work with others, almost like a team building activities, you have respect for others. As you work in a project like this in your community, you have respect for your community. And sir, ultimately, and at the end of the day, you have respect for your country. Getting the job done. The Honourable Member for St. George South, I believe, spoke about using this as an opportunity to tap in with these same community members, getting the opportunity to sell to the Ministry of Education through the School Meals Department, to the Ministry of Health through the polyclinics and the hospital. And sir, this is nothing to look at as too difficult, because even within my own projects, particularly Nature Farm Ranch, sir, I remember we had a contract with the Ministry of Health to provide all the squash and watermelon at one part. And these are the sort of synergies we have to build within the society, that government said, we are going to support you. That we can say X amount we allocate for you to supply. Therefore, that this is not just a feel-good activity, but this now becomes economic empowerment for our communities. And although I am talking about this vesting of land at the psychiatric hospital today, sir, I want us to use this as a prototype that can be used in every single community across Barbados. An example, positive, fruitful, sustainable, that can be used across this country, sir. In closing, I want to encourage those getting involved in this project and the projects after to not stop at just selling your produce. I want you to partner with the Ministry of Small Business to see how you can go further into value adding. You must not only believe that you are beast of burden to just produce raw materials, but can you take it further, add value to it, and have more coming out of your labor so that you can be able to thrive even faster and thrive even more. Sir, I want to close by focusing on this project, one where we can see multiple aspects coming out of this. As the minister said, community gardens, we have the education, cleanup, landscaping competition, parish competitions. And I would encourage all of us to work together to get the job done there. Now, for the last few weeks, almost every time I am out in public and someone in the media or whatever, or even average citizens, they ask me about the peace truce. And so I have to do almost like a former prime minister in here and say, well, we done 3 or 4 steps down the road. We not even about just bringing peace. We about keeping peace and empowering vulnerable communities. That is what it must be about. It cannot be about just a tokenistic activity that we say, wow. But it must be how, sir, do we maintain peace in this country, but also how do we prevent things from happening in the future by ensuring that our people are empowered by the mind first, that we have a positive mindset of self, a positive mindset of our community, and a positive mindset of our country, that we can grow from strength to strength. Everyone in this chamber, sir, knows that if we get all the policies right, we get all the esoteric things right, but we don't get it right with the people that we represent, we're going to find ourselves in problems. And that is why I respect and support this vesting, to ensure that at the end of the day, when all is said and done, that we can see the productivity of this. And not just being a politician, but being a peopletician, as we seek to do the best and make sure that we create a better life for all of our people. Sir, with those few words, I want to say that I support this resolution and I give it my full endorsement. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. James South.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. I want to congratulate all the previous speakers because they've spoken with passion and spoken in some detail about the importance of this program. And I really want to thank the Honourable Member for St. George South for making it possible for this land to be made available. The reason being the scarcity of land in urban corridors is a real, genuine problem. And it's so easy when you are in an urban area to assume that people in urban areas are not interested in farming. But I had a good wake-up call in St. James South. They are interested in farming. And one of the things that we've been doing in St. James South is that we have been facilitating as much as we can people's involvement in farming. And there are a number of young men that are interested in doing it commercially. That is why I really welcome the hard work that has been done by the Honourable Member for St. Philip South and his team at the Ministry of Agriculture in making available to ordinary citizens, because Barbados has a natural problem. We do not have ownership of land in Barbados. And it's something that has to be a major feature in any policy of a Barbadian government, because we are simply too small and our colonial history deprived ordinary citizens from having ownership of land. And therefore, I really welcome the creative and innovative approaches that have been used in order to create opportunities for people to be able to get land that they can do some farming. Now, a group that is of particular interest to me in relation to the farming program are the persons who have been discharged from Dodds. It is one of the most difficult things for people coming out from prison, having served their time, to be able to find a place in which to get started. And sir, I've spoken with a number of them, and the challenge that they have, they need to eat, they need to pay bills, they need to take care of themselves, they need to respond to the responsibilities that they have, whether it's for children or parents, and they cannot get a start. And one of the saving graces that has happened in this country has been the provision of this particular program, the feed program and the project care program, to give them an opportunity to get a start where not being able to get a certificate of character is not something that can be held against them, that they have a start that they can make. And for those who want to turn their lives around, they need that hope. They need that opportunity. And that is why I truly welcome the work of the Ministry of Agriculture and the work that the Minister of Housing is giving in terms of facilitating this. And so what we've been able to do is to encourage those who need that opportunity to get involved in this program. Across St. James South, we found that we were able to start a number of community gardens. We have a number of people who've started their own little thing in the backyard, and they're thriving very well. They're thriving very well. And I'm looking forward to more of them being included. Now, one of the concerns that I have, however, as we proceed to make land available to people, open cultivation puts those small farmers at risk to the weather. We have severe drought. As I was driving along the roads of Barbados, I saw the yellow leaves falling from the trees. I thought that we were into the autumn season and not the spring where we ought to be. But the excessive drought has created a severe challenge for those who want to grow. As a matter of fact, I believe in the newspaper, either today or yesterday, we were alerted that there could be a shortage of vegetables because of this drought. And then we have the other problem that we had last year and the year before, these sudden heavy downpours that then come and wash away everything. And so we're caught between two extremes that I think will make it very difficult for people who want to make a success of farming. And that is why the partnership between the Ministry of Housing and Lands to provide the land and the Ministry of Agriculture now to train and teach them new techniques and approaches to be able to deal with the impact of climate change on their viability as farmers is going to be important, because if we don't solve it, the cost of vegetables and so on will go up, and our food security would be more insecure. And therefore, it is very important that we do that. But I want to support the idea that was put that this is just a start. There will be people who will want to go on to be big commercial farmers. There will be some that want to move to agro-processing, to being able to take their produce and move it to another stage, or to work with other farmers in a co-op to be able to go after a specific venture in terms of the production of foods for Barbadians. Now, one of the areas that I'm very, very passionate about is that we need to take the produce that grows around us, Mr. Speaker, and produce the agro-processed products that provide snacks that are tasty and meaningful for children. One of the difficulties I faced in St. James South was when we wanted to start the gardening program. I discovered that a lot of families don't eat vegetables, parents and children alike. So I had to step back. Before I started the agriculture, I had to start a program in the constituency where we taught them how to take vegetables and present them in a tasty and an attractive manner in order to encourage children now to begin to use these things. And so it meant that we had to go beyond just the ordinary, just providing the land as we're doing today, providing the farming as we're doing today. But we actively have to work with Barbadians to get them to appreciate the importance of healthy eating. And it's the only place we're going to save the next generation from excessive NCDs. And therefore, we really need a program that will start to do that and to encourage that. And I think that if we can work together within the Ministry of Energy and Business, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Tourism, I believe that we can start to look at what types of products, tasty dishes we can develop so that we have a strong chain running between land, agriculture, agro-processing, health, wellness, hitting the table. So that's something that would be important. In the Ministry of Energy and Business, one of the things, there are two things that I think we can work on. One is the formation of co-ops. Co-ops allow people who have limited resources to be able to pool together and develop a business strategy that helps them to achieve more than they ordinarily would trying to move on their own. The Ministry of Industry has provided an international food center where you can have access to the equipment that you need. Similar to the Ministry of Agriculture, everybody doesn't have to go and buy a tractor and a harvester and so on. It could be provided and rented. Similarly, the Ministry of Industry has provided the wherewithal where people with vegetables or product that they want to create and generate, they can come and do quick bulk processing so that they can serve a market consistently with product. And so that would be the further step that we would want to be able to make in terms of empowering people to get involved in Project CARE and the feed program, that we can look at what we can do to do further processing. And if we can develop a line of healthy snacks, tasty snacks that help our children to avoid the dyes and the salt, etc., and produce something that they will want to eat, that way we can ensure that we have health. Now, sir, being able to move this forward One of the things that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade that we work on in that ministry is how can we get access to the technical cooperation that we need in order to develop a new agriculture for Barbados. We need smart agriculture. We need advice on how to deal with the soils. We need advice on how we are going to provide the pesticides and fertilizers that are organic in nature and not are going to be despoiling the soil and despoiling the air and affecting our biodiversity. And what we've been doing as a partner between Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Housing and Lands is we have been seeking the assistance of various countries and have had discussions with them. One of the areas that we've discussed is the whole issue of apiculture, production of honey. We've also had discussions on smart agriculture. How can we use technology and new approaches to combat the impact of climatic events on open field farming? We've had discussions, for example, on fisheries management, that this is going to be very important if we're going to develop the fisheries industry. So the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, we work hand in hand with our fellow ministries to help take the projects and the objectives of this government and help to make it real for Barbadians. And that is one of the reasons, sir, why we heartily support what is being put here before the people. Now, I just want, with your permission, to offer a word of thanks to Dr. Chelston Brathwaite for his tremendous support in helping us to develop the program that will shortly be on the road in relation to being able to grow tilapia as well as being able to grow vegetables all in a green machine. I really sincerely thank him because he was very, very supportive when I had approached him about helping us in St. James South. But when he showed me what he had, I said, this has to be for the whole country. And I'm very happy that we're getting close to the stage now where that can be launched and supported by the Ministry of Agriculture, because I think that having it at the national level will make a tremendous difference to people. There's only one other thing, sir, that I would want to raise, and that is if we're going to encourage more agriculture of certain types, we have to look at how we're going to effectively use land that is currently not in use. And if we can come up with an innovative way where someone who currently has a plot of land, they're not doing anything with it, they're not ready to build, is it possible that you can have arrangements with people that they can make it available to the Ministry of Housing and we use it to be able to provide, say, a 5-year program for someone to do agriculture or to grow something else? If we could come up with a creative way to use land that right now is remaining idle, it will do a lot to help accelerate our objectives here in Barbados. And so I throw that out to colleagues, and I trust that if we can come up with a meaningful way, it will do two things, sir. We've got plots of land in all kinds of places that are a nuisance to the public, a nuisance to householders and residents, and the land is there doing nothing. I think that if we can come up with something creative and temporary, we should be able to advance our agriculture while at the same time making good use of land until it's needed by the owners to be able to convert it to whatever personal use that they have. But I want to offer my thanks, I want to offer my congratulations to both the Ministry of Housing and to the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest, who is getting these 3 acres. I'm trusting that they'll be able to find some for St. James South in the near future, that I too can get some agricultural plots in that area as well. I will be speaking very closely with the Honourable Member for St. George South. That's a promise he needs to make to me. I'm obliged to you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too wish to support this resolution for the vesting of these 2 parcels of land at Black Rock, and to join those who spoke before me in acknowledging the work of the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northwest and his leadership as well as the ministers of housing who have contributed to making this a reality together with BADMC. Now, I noticed that the Honourable Minister of Agriculture started padding up early when he made reference to the land at the Pine Basin that we have spoken at length about. In fact, not only did he start padding up early, he took a single and put the Honourable Member for St. George South to face the bowling by making the recommendation very strongly to him that he complete the work of also having that land at Pine Plantation Road vested in the BADMC. For us to be able to do, as we have talked about for several years now, for us to be able to do a similar kind of project. And I just want to briefly remind the Chamber through you, sir, about the origin of that project. Now, I think it was as far back as 2016 when going through the constituency and coming up on that land and listening to residents in that area, and the area is interesting because it's residents of the Pine Gardens area, the area around by People's Cathedral, but also residents of Collimer Rock. So those residents form a corridor around that piece of land that has really several challenges. The challenges include the fact that for many, many years it would continue to be and stay overgrown. In the hottest months of the dry season, there would be brush fires that threaten the safety of residents and property. In the rainiest months of the year, there would be drainage issues. And in fact, one of the residents took it upon himself in collaboration with the Drainage Division of the Ministry of Transport and Works to be able to himself channel some of the water to make sure that it was not a threat to his property and to the neighboring properties. But apart from the issues with fire, with personal safety and security, because we know that overgrown areas in certain places also represent a potential hideout for people who may be seeking to avoid the authorities for several reasons, and we had heard about several of those cases, but also some of the drainage and flooding issues that attended. But on top of that, it was simply something that, sir, I hate to see in this business of governance, and that is a wasted asset. It really was just, and continues to be until we get the project going, a wasted asset, a tract of land that could go to use the people in the community that we have not been able to use. As a matter of fact, one resident, a lady in Collimer Rock, suggested to me when I visited her, she said, I really just want a little piece of land behind my paling to be able to plant some things. And really, just like how the gentleman who went to speak to the member for St. Michael Northwest started something in his mind, when she spoke, she also triggered something with us that apart from potentially having an area in the foreground of that area at Pine Plantation Road that could be for recreation, because it is a pretty substantial area of land, that we could also have some community farming. And so this was the idea that I put to the Honourable Minister of Agriculture to ask how soon we could have this dealt with. In the interim, I do have to say thank you to both the team at Agriculture and the officers from Transport and Works, because they did do some work to level the area and at least to address the issue of safety and the overgrown trees and shrubs in the area. But apart from a wasted asset, sir, I also hate to see wasted resources, because the time and effort that it took to go and remove and clear that land, really, it was meant to be cleared to begin works. And so what we have now is a solution where it will become overgrown again. We are approaching the hurricane season. And we know that time is of the essence and timing counts when it comes to being able to do these works, because we will have to go, we will have to clear the land, we will have to prepare the land. And I know that we had intended to have this area be used for shade houses. I was advised that the shade houses had arrived on island. I am waiting to hear then when we can have the vesting of these lands in BADMC, and then shortly thereafter, we can have those shade houses that have been earmarked for that area erected and in use. And in the much the same way that the member for St. Michael Northwest related the story to us of the young man who started the project, really, I also have, sir, to relate a story of a not-so-young man, but a gentleman who is a leader in his community with many of the young men in Carrington Village, who himself had approached me and said, is a similar situation, and it's amazing how similar these situations are. You know, these young men want to be able to come with me to do some farming. And I want to caution us too, sir, that we have to be practical. And while we know that things sometimes take time, people also don't have all the time that government has. People often don't have all the time that government has. People have to earn an income. And while, you know, sometimes when I talk to people and I'm not able to give them an immediate solution, but I know that one is coming because I am working with my colleagues to get one, I have to always say to them, I want you to hang in there. And if you feel that you're not hanging in there, I want you to pick up the phone and call me. Because I think sometimes we feel that, man, look, these things take time, you gotta wait, you gotta be patient. And yes, I think that many of the residents for whom we're responsible have a good relationship with patients. But sometimes it's out of your hands. And sometimes the need to be able to earn and even to be able to just simply feed yourself with what you are cultivating starts to overwhelm the other things. And so I note that the Honourable Member for St. Philip South, Honourable Minister of Agriculture, has taken in front by letting me know that this thing is at the top of the agenda, but we really do need to move this along because I am concerned that another year has come, we are coming towards the hurricane season, and this unused asset remains fallow and remains a bit of a liability for the residents of the area. I was also heartened, sir, to hear, and I know that I am treating this almost as though it is a resolution from the Ministry of Agriculture, but I do want to take the opportunity to address some of the agricultural concerns and the remarks made by the Honourable Member before I come to the meat of the resolution. I was heartened to hear the approach to the feed program and the fact that those participants who have been trained and allocated land, who may not be in a position immediately to use that land, that land will be reassigned to others. And why? Sir, I've spoken in this honourable place before about constituents of mine who have been trained and who have not yet been allocated land and who are, again, waiting patiently. These individuals, sir, are not in full-time employment. And I'm curious to know as well this decision-making process which sees people who are in full-time employment be allocated land ahead of those who are not. Because again, we have to be concerned with what is the level of income in each household. If I have household A that is already receiving an income and household B that is not, surely I must prioritize household B in terms of the allocation of resources. So I am encouraged to hear that that there is an expiration date on these lands and cultivating them, and that if they're not used, that they will go to people who can make better use of them. But I also want to encourage us to pay some attention to the criteria that we're using for who is allocated land under the FEED program, because I do think that this is important. Sir, as I come to the meat of the resolution quickly, I want to start in the place that the member who led this resolution started. And he began by giving us quite extensive data on the issue of NCDs and some of the nutrition concerns that we have in this country, in this region, and in the world. And I was happy to hear his emphasis on data, because I had occasion just today, and I've said in this place before that we need to use evidence. I had occasion just today to point out to, or hopefully within earshot of, the gentleman who leads today, as of today, the Democratic Labour Party. Checking my watch, because who knows what will happen. But I had occasion to point out that with respect to the question of loans and interest rates and so on, I'm on the question of data, sir. But with respect to that question, Appendix C of the Estimates of Revenue and Expenditure lists every single loan that under which this government is contracted. Not only does it list the loan, not only does it list outstanding amounts, it also lists in the notes the interest rate amortization for every single loan. Further to that, loan contracts of the Caribbean Development Bank, the Latin American Development Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, and several other institutions with which governments has loan arrangements are laid in this honorable chamber. And I had to say to those who were calling for these hot and sweaty calls in the public space for information that is on the Parliament website, that if you go in and do a keyword search, LOAN, loan, I just did it right here, sir, you will find a list, LOAN, loan, of all of the loan contracts that have been laid in this place. So before we go making all kinds of claims and calls, and that gentleman likes to call things and people hot and sweaty, but this seems pretty hot and sweaty to me, do a search, and you will find the information that you are looking for. So that was just to emphasize the importance of data and evidence as I continue to support this resolution. But I want to start on the question of NCDs. And the honourable member talked about the importance of this kind of project where we are growing food, people are growing food for themselves. He spoke about how he used to eat food from neighbors and from the backyard. My mother had a kitchen garden. I've talked about it all the time. My mother, helped support us on that kitchen garden and fed us from that kitchen garden. You couldn't sit down at the table, sir, without her. Sometimes we would try to avoid going and getting some lettuce from outside. We used to put it in the middle of the table and break it off, like how people break off bread. Break off a leaf at a time. No fancy salads or anything. That's just how we used to do it. And we were able to go and make sure that we got healthy food in that way. And he also talked about some of the other things that we need to do. And I'm constantly going back to some of the things that have been a part of this, of the manifesto of this Barbados Labour Party administration. One of those things is the idea of wealth for health. Wealth for health. Those grants and the evidence suggests that it is cheaper for a state, for a government, to reward people for taking care of themselves than it is to try to fix all of the NCDs through dialysis, amputations, through having to find prosthetic limbs, all of this care that you rush in with after the fact, that costs the state so much. A fraction of that could go into, before the fact, helping to reward people who are sticking to their treatment protocol, who are taking their medication on time, who are exercising, who are tracking their food and eating well. These are the kinds of things that we are realizing call for far less investment for much bigger output, much bigger impact when it comes to chronic non-communicable diseases, hypertension, diabetes, and so on. I do hear the call for a Caribbean calorie counter, which couldn't hurt, but I again caution that, when I go on this device and I go on one of several apps and I put in cornmeal cuckoo, I can find cornmeal cuckoo. When I put in cassava pone, I can find cassava pone. So I don't want people of Barbados to believe that this data does not exist. I don't want us to hide behind the fact that there is not yet something called a Caribbean calorie counter to cause us to not do the right thing or not be able, or say that we don't know how much is in there, because we can find out the data is there. Now, some of us may have to correct the data if it's not accurate. Some of us may have to say, well, we're going to add breadfruit cuckoo to the cornmeal cuckoo because that's the one that I prefer, personally. But I don't want to give the impression that we are waiting for something, because we have enough to be able to start improving some of our habits. And similarly, something that we don't talk much about, and that's the question of portion sizes. That's the question of portion sizes. And I think that when it comes to being able to afford to eat well, we say this thing as a blanket statement: it is expensive to eat healthy. We say it over and over, and we believe it. But in fact, a lot of the sizes, the portion sizes that we are consuming, are far beyond the amount of food that we need to eat. So there are some places I go and I buy food, and I have to take it home and eat the rest later, because there's no way that that is the amount of food that a woman of my size should be eating for lunch. And if we have a system where we say, listen, just like the Americans do with all the fast food, let's try it here with Bajan food. To say to people, look, a standard portion is this amount, a handful, the size of my hand, of the palm of my hand. That is a serving of most things. Potato, cassava, rice, that's a serving size. And if we say a standard portion size, for you to buy that from me, the vans that go on the construction sites and so on, is $6. Now, if you want upsize, it's going to cost you more. I don't know if you can afford it. If you want to upsize to a large portion, it's going to cost you $12. And then we will see how much more affordable it is to eat the amount of food that you require to sustain yourself in the body in which you walk around on this planet. Because we think that we need to go and pile up. Even when I was growing up, sir, I noticed that my father's a small man, but we have this notion that we got to feed the men more. And you see the plate that would be stacked up high, a mountain of food. And really the truth is that most of us, especially small Caribbean people, don't need that amount of food at one serving. So it's not just about these food choices. I hear people all this thing about sweet potato versus white potato. Yeah, sweet potato got some more vitamin A, but pound for pound is about the same number of calories. Let us really give people real information about food. Real information about food. And it comes down a lot. Yesterday I was at the Barbados Workers Union May Day thing, and I told a colleague of mine, don't give me any fish cakes. But when people say he jerked them in my hand, I didn't want to make it feel bad. But I ate one. I didn't need to eat 8. I may have wanted to, but I didn't need it. And so the idea of what do we need to sustain our bodies and to perform, food as fuel, these are all of the ideas that I know the Honourable Minister of State and the Ministry of Health and others are working with. But I think that we need to start to tie the economics of it to the portion sizes and to really what is it that we need to sustain ourselves. Because a lot of the things that we think we need, people say it's hard to eat healthy. Protein shakes cost a lot of money. You don't need a protein shake to eat healthy. You don't need to set foot in a health food store to eat healthy. Everything that you need, you can grow, you can catch in the yard, a yard fowl or a piece of fish, and sustain yourself. Sir, I also want to consider and respond to the intervention of the honourable member who led this resolution with respect to the balance of development. He quite rightly and quite sincerely made the observation that there needs to be a balance of land development between housing and agriculture, and I would go further to say commercial development and other things. And, you know, for years there has been this tension. I am aware that the government has developed, has built on the existing physical development plan as a part of the Ministry of Planning and Development to be able to make some sense of the limited land space that we have. I really think that this revised physical development plan needs to be before us, because that is what guides a lot of the planning decisions that are made. Planning is hot in the news this week, sir, for all kinds of reasons. But I think that having that document before Barbadians will help them to understand when government makes certain decisions about the use of land, what is guiding that? The physical development plan is really saying to you, this is the amount of land that we must have in agriculture in order to attain food security or food sovereignty or whatever are the targets of that sector. This is the amount of land that we must have for energy in order to meet the 2030 Barbados energy policy or to hit whatever targets have been redeveloped as part of that policy. This is the amount of land we need in manufacturing. This is the amount of land we need, and so on, so that when decisions are made, people understand that we are talking about a balance of land use to make sure that we are developing in a coherent way and bringing everyone with us and having them be a part of that development. And I have to take this opportunity in that regard then, sir, to acknowledge something that I have called for over and over and over and over and over in this honourable place. And to thank the Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael Northeast, and the Cabinet for heeding my calls to complete the business of the transfer of resources to the Urban Development Commission to address the issue of transfer of title or tenantry land in urban areas. Because, you see, sir, as you well know, the business of urban development is that everything must happen all at once in the same limited land space. And so by having that transfer of resources, and it is before somebody calls now out there for the evidence that this has happened, it was a subject of a resolution here, the 3.1 million that was transferred to the Urban Development Commission for what I call the continuation of the legacy of Tom Adams with respect to the Tenantry Freehold Purchase Act that we cannot lose sight of. The landmark piece of legislation that afforded Barbadians the right to own their land. We are talking about former tenantry land that was owned by white slave owners in this country, and having people rightfully own that and be able to use it as an asset. And so I do want to officially say thank you to the Cabinet, to the government, for putting the Urban Development Commission in a position to continue that work within urban Barbados, because it's about ownership of land, it is about being able to use land for farming. It is a confluence of things that must happen at once on the limited land space that we
The
have.
honourable member has 2 more minutes.
I don't even need that, sir. I support this resolution wholeheartedly. I'm excited to see what will happen here, but far more excited to see what will happen before the end of the year in Pine Plantation Road. I've already offered to write some documents if you all need some writing done. I think that the proposal is sound. The people are waiting. And sometimes we say in this place, I'm going to do X for the member for St. James South. I'm going to do X for the member for St. Michael West. You're doing it for us, you know. You're doing it for the people of Barbados, for whom we are advocates. And I want us to always have that in mind, that people are waiting for their futures to start. And I encourage us to help them start those futures. Mr. Speaker, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable member for St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I do intend to be very brief. I support, of course, as all the speakers before me, that which is before this honourable place. Mr. Speaker, sir, I do wish to add my voice, however, to support not only what is before the House, but to suggest that there are a number of people also in St. Michael South who would benefit from such an initiative, as there are, I'm sure, people in St. Michael Central and other places. And therefore, I look forward to, even as we begin, the expansion of this particular project. So many people in my constituency have asked me about doing such a thing. Many people want to be involved in agriculture. Many young men who people have written off see this as an avenue and an opportunity to change their lives, sir. And it is in that context that I also support this bill. I support a very busy Minister of Housing and a very busy Minister of Agriculture, because I know that this is very, very important work, sir. But even as we do this, sir, I also recognize that there is a business component to this that we must also appreciate. Because in Barbados, as in most developing countries, there is a high risk, almost propensity for failure for entrepreneurs. And for people who have limited resources, when they fail, they often don't have the opportunity to come again. So even as we set this project up, we have to make sure we do it right, sir, to reduce the possibility of failure, sir. Because as I said, once you fail, for people who have limited resources, it is very difficult to come again. And it is in that vein that I also wish to support what is before the House. Sir, I hold a very strong view, I will be brief, but I hold a very strong view, sir, that Barbados must be in a position to feed itself. And that this particular project will allow us to be able to achieve that. This country must be sustainable. And recent occurrences, whether it has been our experiences with COVID or the distributions in the supply chain from the simple blocking of a canal at one point, sir, that made it very difficult for us to be able to access the things that we need to be able to feed ourselves, are clear indications that this country must be able to feed itself. But in our constitution, the constitution of the political party that we all support, sir, I think it is the only one in the region that speaks about regionalism. And so while I feel that we must be able to feed ourselves, I feel that the Caribbean region must have a long-term approach to the region being able to feed itself, so that we don't have to be able to do everything in Barbados. I know this conversation doesn't sit well with everybody, but we don't have to be able to do everything in Barbados, but we have to be able to do it in the region, so that Barbados can feed itself on a day-to-day basis, or in the event of a disaster for a few weeks, but the region should be able to feed itself almost forever. And I think that is the important long-term trajectory that we must be on, sir. And sir, even as we do this project, sir, I would wish to remind this House, sir, that farming does not occur at the university or at community college or all those things. You might teach it, but farming occurs in the field. And it is going to be important to work with the people who have the know-how, the people who have been doing this for a long time. There are many retired farmers, sir, who I'm sure would love to be able to be part of this program and will be able to come into these communities and help people who might be eager to do farming, but who really don't know anything about farming. And there are many people who have been farming that perhaps now have forgotten things that many of us will never ever know. And that we have to be able to use those resources, sir, as we go forward, sir, to be able to build out this particular program. I do not wish to see when the boys in St. Michael South, or females, sir, decide that they want to be involved in farming, that they fail, sir. And I think all farmers, those who've retired, because many of them have retired from farming now, I suppose much to the dismay of the Minister of Agriculture, those resources, sir, many people now have gone into housing and other business ventures. But we also have to be able to try to pull them back out, sir. Teach young people in the urban corridors who've never farmed the best way to be able to do it. And I'm saying I know that we often send people to courses and so on, but farming occurs in the field. And those people who have the know-how, I would love to see being matched closely with the people who are trying to learn this thing. We have, in other areas of business, sir, we import oftentimes people who have papers, and we ignore people who have experience. And therefore, the idea that this is going to work is going to rely heavily on the experiences of men and women who know. People who have built businesses from farming, learning day by day, people who could tell us a lot about the seasons, even as the seasons change with climate change, but to be able to use them, sir, to be able to effectively deliver on this project. I would like to see all those retired farmers helping these young people in the urban corridors to be able to get this right. And it is going to be very, very important because for many people, the capacity to be able to feed yourself at some point in time could rely on all of us being able to have a little home garden. Years ago, I think the Honourable Minister of Housing said it. Years ago, when a Prime Minister said people should have a kitchen garden, people frowned upon the idea. People frowned upon the idea. But now it is becoming quite apparent that it makes sense to have a little garden where you could grow your own things. And, you know, things become cool, I think, in their own time. And this, sir, is an idea whose time has come. And yes, it is now very cool to say you have your own garden, you have organic produce, you know, you grow your own things and so on. I think these are going to be important as we go forward. So this, if this is done right, and I think what we have, the model that I've seen, is the right model, but if this is done right, we have the opportunity now to reduce poverty in this country. We have the opportunity, sir, to begin the process of reducing inequality. And people can be self-sufficient, yes, but they have the opportunity to be involved in meaningful production. I have said, sir, when we start talking about the productive sectors in Barbados, I've made the point on several occasions, and I make it here again, that the productive sectors must be about people. The Ministry of People Empowerment, I spent so much time in that ministry as social transformation. But the Ministry of People Empowerment, sir, should be a productive sector. To the extent that we've moved people, and the PM says, you know, we have to move the people from being a point of dependency, being dependent, to independent, to interdependent, where they can give back and generate their own revenue and generate wealth, sir. If we are able to do that, you see, I think oftentimes when people think about the social sector, they only think about it in terms of a little handout. Somebody's going through a little difficulty, they need a berry. You give them a berry. But this is about a lot more than that. If this is going to be sustainable, then we have to be able to ensure that people don't only have it when they need it. Because for most of us, the capacity to be able to eat and to save and to send your children to school determines or is determined by the fact that you have generated a little bit of excess, a little bit of profit to be able to move forward, sir. And I think that this opportunity before us is great, sir. I also feel, sir, that many persons, I was just speaking to the Honourable Minister of Labour, the Honourable Member for St. Peter, sir, about a call we had in relation to NIS. And many people in this country are still not making their NIS contributions. And I say so because there's so many older men, women too, but mostly men, who come before the Ministry of People's Empowerment, sir, who have not paid enough contributions. And as older men, they have no kind of income at all, and oftentimes they have no place to live. Because, you know, men are young and they're enjoying their lives and they're visiting many houses. It's the reality. They're visiting many houses during the course of their youth, and they're spending their energies doing God knows what. And then as they get older men with no income, having not made the contributions to NAS, and many of them sometimes, the skills that they have, if they have arthritis or if they've lost their sight or partially, they can't earn an income, you can't use their skills, then have to be able to rely on the state. You can't go and tell those men to farm, but at that age, they've never done it. They're hardly going to be able to learn it. But I suspect so many of us would be able to feed ourselves. Many of us, if we take this seriously. I see this project almost as the underpinning, really, of our social transformation, because it hits all the necessary boxes. It ticks all of them. It takes the box, sir, in relation to teaching people skills, completing the circle of enfranchisement that PM is always talking about, giving people opportunity, breaking that cycle that we have to break. Sir, you would know. And a reporter called me over the weekend asking me about unemployment and if I think that's going to change the status at welfare. Sir, the situation there is such that there are generations of families in poverty and before the welfare department. Generations of families in poverty before the welfare department. Poverty is nothing that's passed on from one generation to another in their DNA. These things are systemic. And if we're going to break that cycle, we have to be able to do what this project does, which is to give people skills, complete that circle of enfranchisement, give people the opportunity to eat, but also the capacity to earn, if necessary, from this. And sir, this is how I view this project, sir, as being extremely, extremely important, sir. And I caution those, again, I'm not the minister responsible, which is my good friend next to me, the minister for labor. But I would like to advise older people, younger people, before they get older, and older people too, before they retire, to make their contributions to the NIS. Please. Because many people are coming to me and asking me to intervene when they have not made the contributions during the course of their lifetime, and then find themselves in a situation where it's very, very difficult for them to be even able to feed themselves, sir. So I would like to make that request known, that while you have the opportunity to work and to earn, whether you're an entrepreneur or not, to pay your NIS. And if these young men and young women start to generate enough revenue, to find a way to allow them to pay a little trala to their NIS, so that eventually when they get older, they won't find themselves in that particular position, sir. The other thing, sir, that for all of us who studied history, we would remember, and again, sitting next to you, I remember for St. Peter, most of the time we have these little conversations, but we would remember, sir, history would have told us all that in cases where people were either slaves or in the immediate post-emancipation period in Barbados where freedom was only a word, because in other countries you could run to the hills and run. In Barbados, you really had to go back to the plantation if you wanted to live. And what many people ate during slavery and afterward, that our taste buds have gotten so used to that we call good food, was slave food. The reject, sir, of what massa had. So a lot of the parts of the pig that the massa wouldn't eat, we learned to make into delicacies. We say we enjoy it. The amount of salt that was put on food, sir, so that it could preserve itself, so that we could have it for a long time, another contribution from slavery. Massive amounts of carbs, and say we had a good food, a good meal. Do you want to remember for St. Michael's, South Central was so right. You could have good food because all vegetables are good. And potatoes aren't bad. People like to say potatoes are bad. Potatoes aren't bad. But if you want to eat all the potatoes in the world, now that is bad. You want to have the biggest plate, the most gravy, those things, sir. Those are things that we were given. We were given. You know, when I was a student in London, many years ago, and not only was the food a little bland at the time, but the servings were so different. I had to adjust. Because when I first started seeing these servings, when you go queue up for food, it's not like here. When you queue up for food in Barbados, you get a big plate. There, one scoop, a little bit of greens. A plate full is less than what we would call in Barbados, maybe even like a handful. And you learn to live on that. Eventually, funny enough, you learn to accept that you could get full on that. We have to adjust a lot of the things that we are doing, but we have gotten so used to this food in these big portions. And we enjoy this amount of salt, this amount of sweets, sir. All of our drinks, we take lemonade, it's healthy. But when you put 4 or 5 scoops of sugar in lemonade, it can't be healthy anymore. Well, the lemons are healthy, and the water is good. But when you put all this sugar in it, it's not good anymore, sir. And these are things that we have to begin to teach our people, sir. And that is why I say that again, sir, because I know that as Barbados becomes an older society, and we found a way to reduce mortality, we have not been very successful at reducing morbidity. So a number of our older people are sicker than they have to be because of the foods that they enjoy in their youth, because of the lack of activity in their youth. I also feel people have a different relationship with food when they grow it for themselves. If you grow something, you're going to want to eat it. If you grow your own beans, you might want to cook them. And these are going to be important, sir. The country can ill afford, in my opinion, the country can ill afford to do otherwise, because there's a cost to health care. There is a burden on the social sector, sir. When people are busy, but their older families, sir, are extremely unwell. I'm not saying that people won't get sicker as they get older. This happens. But the rate at which Barbadians are becoming ill, these NCDs, a lot of it is because of the foods that we're consuming. And that is why we have to be able to grow the things that we wish to eat, and then having done that, to eat, sir, smaller portions, I think. It's very, very, very important. So I had a conversation recently with somebody telling me about the government trying to limit people's freedoms because we're trying to stop children from drinking soft drinks, and all of us grow up drinking soft drinks, and what kind of government this is. And I said, well, it's a government that cares, obviously, about your child. Obviously. Because if I'm saying to you that I don't want your child to be having X amount of Bims and fruities, I don't make Bims anymore, juices and soft drinks, sir. And people feel that you're putting some burden on them, sir. Many people don't realize the benefit of the things that you have to do, sir. And I had this conversation. I feel that sometimes we pass policies and we pass legislation and we assume that people understand why it is that we're doing it, and maybe everyone doesn't understand. And maybe we have to talk the country through it over and over and over again. I know we've been talking about doing little videos on the reasons why we do things and how we did things. When I was in Maritime, we used to say we have to go back to get to the future. Go back to eating from a calabash to get rid of the plastic. Go back to the old fishing methods so that you don't overfish. You have to go back to get to the future. Go back to eating the things that are good for you. Go back to every person in the community looking after the other people in the community. Because the things that we took for granted now are no longer happening, sir. Sir, sometimes I see people come, and I'm sure somebody's going to say there's a reason for it, but I see people come asking for support in households, sir, where the collective income of the household is more than enough to get the household through. But you have one house And every person in that house doing their own thing, and we haven't learned to live as a people, like other ethnicities have been able to do. And that to be able to break this cycle of poverty is going to require perhaps that we go back. We have to go back to that. You know, the truth is, sir, is my view, again, that a lot of what we now suffer from was deliberate, again on the slave plantation, to break down the notion of family, to break down the notion of society. You enslave a man in his mind, you enslave him for a long, long time after you remove the chains. That is what we're dealing with, even in relation to the things that we eat, sir. So, sir, as I close, because I said it wasn't going to be long, sir, there are a number of people asking for all kinds of things. A number of people. And people want us to be able to deliver certain things, sir, because, you know, it is easier to come and say, here, have the sweet potatoes, or have the fruit, or have these things, sir. It's easier. But it is not better in the long term. It cannot be better in the long term. First of all, it's unsustainable. But if you have the capacity to be able to do this for yourself, nobody can take it from you. When you learn to be a farmer, if you are 100 years old and your mind is still intact, you still know how to be a farmer. You can still teach somebody else how to farm. When you get these skills, sir, as you were saying to people who should do the courses at NTI, or what's the other program we have? The building, where you, the construction gateway. When you learn those skills, nobody can take them from you, sir. And the government has been so complete that even if you start a project like this and you need some assistance, you can go to the trust loans. You can get the support there, a little $5,000 if you need to. Get some additional training there. The Ministry of Agriculture has made available all kinds of resources. This does not happen. I mean, we are taking things for granted that don't happen any other place in the world, sir. So I support this, sir. I ask Barbadians to support it, to come on board. There are young people, sir, who are messaging, asking for opportunities, sir. Come on board, see what this is all about, sir. And understand that ownership of a skill, the capacity to be able to say, I moved this land from this to this. The capacity to be able to say that I fed myself and my family, sir, that is invaluable. This project is invaluable, sir. And so I wish to support this project, sir, and that which is before this house. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't plan to be long either on this issue, but I believe there's no issue that is more important than issues related to hunger and poverty and some of the most difficult periods in our history. If you, in retrospect, go back to pockets of our history, many times you will see creative thoughts, developing creative models to address the historic or rather historical materialistic nature of the society at a specific time in history. You just look back at history and you see when these new models emerge, whether it's in the 1930s, whether it's after the revolutions across the world, not only in Barbados, you see creative ideas come up. And it's a mystery on why it is that at these critical points in our history, this thing happens. For sure in Barbados, when we saw the fundamental changes, so social and economic changes, and even political changes, we were at a critical point of severe poverty. Poverty haunts us through our entire history. And the concept of self-reliance emerged out of those difficult times, even during the slave period, because we had to look in order to supplement what little was given. And in many cases, we had special provisions, special land space for us to grow some food and so on. And in the 1920s, in the early 20th century, we saw the changes that came as a result of struggling with poverty and starvation. Sir, this is an exercise that we have to bring the public along with us. Right now, it is among parliamentarians and most of us who hold leadership positions in this country, we have a body of concepts which is mirrored in a project called CARE. But many people do not fully understand the tenets of CARE. And therefore, they are not aware that they're responding to something that is relatively new. In other words, they're probably not seeing the revolution before their eyes. They're like Rick Van Winkle. You know, he slept for 20 years after drinking alcoholic beverages. 20 years. He didn't even know where he was when he woke. And there are people who look and see changes before them every day, but they're so steeped in conformity that they do not even recognize that changes are occurring. And while this might be deriving from, I describe it, and this is my way, I describe it as socialist attitudes within. It is socialist attitudes within that we can provide for ourselves despite of all the exogenous and endogenous impacts on the society itself. And we know that we live in a Western capitalist market, and people who get involved in capitalism looking for money at the abuse and the exploitation of workers, because we are workers. We are workers. We are the stock of workers in the society. Farmers are workers. But we need to move people away from that mindset. We're human beings. We're not here to be just producing work for people to get gains and extract wealth from the country and carry it back to Great Britain. We feel that if we are given the opportunity to have lands in our possession, not necessarily lands that we own because it's a transitional period, but if we can have lands in our possession that we can grow food, we might be able to feed ourselves and avoid being relegated down to a state of starvation. And in this post-COVID period, and during the COVID period, we see how strong the tide was going against us. And people were not working. We were using every fruit on the trees, not only breadfruit, but whatever came up, we were using it because there was, in many homes, no income. And if we are not supposed to be getting involved in all types of deviant behavior and finding ourselves into destitution, it meant that we have to come up with something creative. You don't have gas, but then you've got to learn to burn wood. These are harsh realities that we had to face. And so I know a lot of people know nutrition and healthy living, but the state that we have been in from the early 17th century, we were surviving. We can purchase the things that we knew were necessary in order for us to survive, so we eat what we got at the specific time. So you end up with hypertension, you end up with diabetes, you end up with triggers for your shoes, bunions. All of these things poor people had to face. I am not into the exercise of being absolutely or even partially dependent, because I would like us to move to a stage where we are not dependent on the traditional business class. I will never be a full supporter or fully dependent on the traditional planters of this country. They developed the model that caused us to be who we are now. You could even wear a tie or a bow tie. And I see a man doing all these things now. Sir, this is an opportunity to really state, because of who we are after black self-government, where the state now has a responsibility to take care of the subjects. This exercise is fundamental because the state is using its land to transfer it into the possession of the black poor in this country. This is a form of economic enfranchisement too. Not monetary rewards alone. This is a form of economic enfranchisement. It is ownership. Some of us, because we are educated, we got to put ownership in inverted commas. But possession is possession anyhow, because all people are always in possession of land. And I am proud to know that this step has been made by the Honourable Member for St. George South in making 3.3 acres of land available in Black Rock, especially to the young men of Deacons, the farm, Ferniehurst, the Black Rock area. It's really an extension of a model that I started a few years ago in the Pinelands, and the Israel Level Foundation started in the Pine Basin, which is a model that, because there were very few non-governmental institutions at that time, making a request on the state for land for young black men and women. Not just men on the block, because all black men and all black women are not men and women on the block. But we made a request, and I got over 7.5 acres of land in the Point Basin, which the state took back some from me. The Pinelands also had some. And there were young men doing farming in that area. I tried my best to try to explain to them the transition that they were taking us through, and try to get them also to engage other young people within the community to work along with them to produce food. It was a necessity. If there is no philosophical underpinning, people will never understand why a government will ask poor people to go back into the land. Those who are in the forefront of this program has to be constantly talking to this society, even to get them to go and work land in their backyards, so to speak. Because there's a scar, and the scar is grounded in the attitude and the behavior of people who treated us the way they did since the 17th century. They even shaped the cane holes for us and tell us what size the cane holes must be, and tell us we're not getting paid. You know what it meant, or you know the kind of brain damage that occurred from the 1620s until now that has caused our people to have a hatred for our agriculture. And if this government can do this, I'm not talking about theorizing or a combination of concepts that we call a theory or we call a model or paradigm. I'm not talking about that. It's all right to be in a state of glee over great ideas. But when you're ready to implement the ideas, there are a lot of obstacles. But we've got to find ways of getting around the obstacles or pushing the obstacles out of the way. Because if we purport to have a clear vision of what we want to achieve, and this is not, and that's why I say it is not just what we conceptualize, it didn't come from the top. It came from the people's experience in a state of crisis. And the government was elected because the government is supposed to represent the interests of the people, the vast majority, all too, but some people, they want no representation. They want to dictate to government how we should go in agriculture too. They believe that the model that they created in an inhumane environment created by them is a fixed model that must be applied universally. So they apply it to Barbados alone, they apply it to the Caribbean, Latin America, North America, the African continent, Asia. They feel that this is the only model. You are now coming up against these people who already raped the lands and raped the people too. And now you have power, and you want to come up with something new. So the minister, look, we're going to be able to appreciate not only what we're doing, you're going to be able to appreciate what the minister, not only what the Minister of Housing is doing today, but you have to be able to understand what a Minister of Agriculture is coming up against. He doesn't tell me anything. I don't have privileged to any social environment or any formal environment to hear the challenges, but I know it can't be easy. Because there are a number of non-black people in this country don't believe that no black man can be an agriculture minister. Because you don't know how to treat people bad. You come from a heritage where they used to pay people to work. And we murder people every day and never face a law court yet. You put all the restraints on land. Look, apart from agricultural land, this is fishing too. This is blue economy too. You got people building places all up on the beaches in Barbados and the boy can't move them. Huh? Why you would want to put us back in the hands of those people to take charge of things? You got a man up in Bay Street. One of the first businesses in Barbados, one of the first government units in Barbados that entered in an agreement with this man who was doing something that is illegal in CBC, You got these things happening. I suspect that I'm a victim of his power. Can't say it's true, but I suspect so. And the Minister of Agriculture has to understand from time to time in an effort to make this transition, or as my friend who spoke before me said, this transformation, they're moving us out of poverty. You're going to come up against these encumbrances in this country. So I know that it is not a discussion if you want to continue business as usual, that would even cause a man who called himself a journalist to write anything in the newspaper tomorrow morning, because you can't understand it. That's what I'm saying. You got to explain. This is a revolution. This is a social revolution. And the honourable member from St. Michael's Central, it's an economic revolution. And if you achieve it, it's a political revolution. It sounds good. It's noble. It is worthy of achieving. But don't believe that you're going to make any fundamental changes in this parliament, shifting wealth or possession to your own people without opposition. If I was part of that hegemonic type, I would fight you too, because you're taking from me what I stole over a number of years. I want the Minister of Agriculture to know he has my full support. However light that way is, I'm going to help you to make a pound. I will do that. I will hope that I can help young men in the farm. You might not believe in cosmic forces. And the representative today made one of the strongest, smoothest, and clearest presentation, because it was in his heart. He might not even know why he was so clear. He was representing the people from whom he sprung. Farm, Deacons, Ferniehurst, Black Rock, all around that area. So he's taught from his heart. He didn't have a script. And God can take care of him, because he's doing what is right. And there'll come a time in our lives, not that you don't support party or government, but you support human beings, and you give priority to your own. You give priority to your own. Or nobody else is going to give you any special treatment. You have to. Some might say, man, I believe in what Prescott is saying, but I am not going to say that because I'm likely to be a victim too. But it is true. Nobody can't take it from you if you conceal it. But make sure you act within a specific trajectory in trying to achieve the goals to transform the lives of your own people. This government has always been successful when it seeks to transform the lives of the poor. I understand this whole thing about aquaponics and hydroponics and chickens and pigs. I understand all these things too, Well, anybody that understand that, something going wrong with the brain. So I understand the minister will tell you, look, we're going to give you 10 aquaponic machines in each constituency, and that is arithmetic good 300 across the island. How much chickens we gave to you, how many private people contribute to the chicken distribution. I respect those who give a little, because some don't give anything at all. Some don't give anything at all. And when the government asks a man who extract wealth from Barbados, from a family that had money and wealth from exploitation and abuse for over 400 years, they make all kind of excuses, and if they give a little, it's an investment. I really deplore that kind of behavior. I don't know if it's because it's a small dependent state. I don't know if it's because it's a small dependent state and when these people are ready, they can run away. Because they ran away to Australia in the 1960s. And when they're ready, they went back to England. After the few that's paying wages now is underpay everybody. They're interested in that wage increment. They don't even want to get tools if you're working with them. But I got people who stand on if you want to work, bring your own tools. You live in a country that is in a practical way underdeveloped. And you have people say, you want a job and you only got tools. You don't go to school, man. You ain't even got money when you get up in the morning to get breakfast. You do a good CV, and you go out on the road, put on your best shirt, because suddenly your brother or your sister or somebody buy the shirt for you early in the morning. And the job that you're going to do ain't even deserve clothes. So I want the minister to understand, because I'm not saying I know everything, but I want the minister to understand, or both ministers who are relevant to this specific bill, how it would function, what structures we need to put in place. Are the structures working well? Are the functions functioning well? Can we reach the goals and the objectives that we set about to reach? And study what are the challenges. But if you give people land, we know we're going to get an irrigation. We're going to make a plow, we're going to make plows available to them. Tools but this is what the state is doing. The state is setting an example. Setting an example of how do you treat people. When we have been fighting from being not a human being to becoming a subhuman being, and now you're going to get two. They're going to be 3 fish. They're going to get about 8 people to become one human being. All these kind of, you can imagine that I got people on the face of the earth that sit down and study that and claim they got intelligence. Huh? You cannot vote in parts of the United States of America at all. They had the right. Here the same thing too. Don't mind what you see written in the law. You got things written in the Constitution about land. And somebody could go occupy the beach. You ain't caring nothing about town planning. This is an indifferent man. You ain't caring about town planning. You ain't caring about who is prime minister. You ain't caring nothing about who is minister of housing and lands. And we sitting down here, big men and women, and we can't change that. No, these are painful things, I don't know how you all feel about these things. These are painful things. It's a lack of respect for every minister and MP and any prime minister in this country, for any stupid backward man to do these things. And because of the people not having knowledge about these things, fifth formers and sixth formers trained to think the way that they think, and they're writing reports and passing information through the entire nation, even to those who don't visit here. So what they see there is like everything that they see there is like a part of the Bible. And these people doing as they like. You have to talk not only about Surinamese chickens coming from Guyana, not only about whether tilapia will be in the bottom section of the machine produced by Dr. Braffett. You got to tell the people what it is this government is trying to do, because they will see it and still don't see it. And that is the ultimate part of it is the political revolution. If you do it, I have no doubt. I heard the honorable member from St. Michael's South making the point. If it is done right, just like the Tenantry Freehold Purchasing Act, which we must give a rebirth to as soon as we're in a position to do so. It is done right, like vacation we pay. This would be one of the major planks of the Barbados Labour Party of this government then. Because somebody tell me they don't recognize parties. But this government, if we just do it right, I believe that in every vacant pocket of land across Barbados, I don't mean house spots, because somebody will reduce it to the ridiculous. We got people like that in the system. They will feel that they want to take out somebody else and put potatoes for it. But wherever the government has land, and it's not being used, we keep enhancing this care project, not just an acronym, you know. It means something, not just community agriculture, it means something. The acronym says so much, even outside of agriculture, it's about care. It's about people. But we've got to talk to these people about it. Tell them when things were hard. You had slip feeding rabbits, and you had potatoes in the back. You had no natural gas. You had 2 iron bars and some ceramic blocks. And you used to put the bars across it and put on a pot. And sometimes the pot had no cover. And a good wood fire. And when you get big, you put on you use some coals. And why we did that? Not because we were backward. A man who behaved that way, now you either got to be doing it deliberately or you're really backward. But in those days, we had no choice. You push our backs against the wall. We must do better. Don't care how hard life is. Look, we kind circumvent all the blockages in terms of concepts. But the implementation is what I really would love to see become successful. And it starts all here with the Minister of Housing and Lands making that land available. But I know we have other lands available as well, and I would like to see the state transfer some of that land in the hands. Look, who can rent it, get them a license, but let them use it. I hear about 10-cent license and all before. You don't hear what that is all about? Hey, lawyers got papers that say, pay 10 cents a year. And you can have this land, work up peppercorn, something, right? They got land, wasteland. And in the meantime, people will be happy to work the land as long as they know that the state can't behave like the plantation owner. The state in the form of the parliamentary representatives, because the state got many different definitions, but the state in terms of the parliamentary representatives, we must, all that Clico land, run about in bush, and then you quarrel about Cowitch. Then you're calling the Ministry of the Environment. You're going to call the Ministry of Agriculture. The land is there all the time in the hands of the state. Lend the land to people who are willing to work it. If it is Rastafari, lend the Rastafari the land. If it is Muslims, lend them the land. And there could be a program of that nature. Because some of the lands that we're actually allowing young men to use now, we're not so inflexible that if a man don't have $10 to pay for 2 acres, that he can't get it.
Your Honourable Member has 2 more minutes.
So, sir, I gotta come home. 2 seconds. Look, I feel very strong that we are on to something. But it is a very fertile, it's very fertile concept or concepts that we're playing with at present. We gotta face the realities that the implementation might not be as smooth as the conceptualizing of this dream. I strongly believe, sir, that this is an underestimated social program, an economic program. And I will finish with these words. If we can get it right, this is a major plank for the Barbados Labour Party and this government in achieving something that no other black government ever achieved in this country. I strongly support this model. I want to thank the Minister of Housing and Lands also for making available the 3.3 acres of land at Black Rock for the young people in that particular community. Thank you very much.
Honourable Member St. George South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to give some closing remarks, which shall be brief. Oh, and the member for St. Michael East, he said we are agreeing again, but I asked for how long? But at least we are agreeing to there. You know, a good gentleman who represents the people exceptionally well. But I want to recognize him as the chairman of this Project Care project. This land will be vested in BADMC, but of course, the member for St. Michael East, along with the member for St. Philip South, they both have responsibility for the execution to ensure that all the policy guidelines are indeed in place. And I know the good member for St. Michael East, as chairman of Project Care, will do nothing less than to support working class people as they seek to build out the agricultural sector within that lovely constituency of St. Michael Northwest. But Mr. Speaker, I heard the comments, and indeed the comments accentuate and underscore and highlight the importance of agriculture to our society. And indeed, the provision of land to allow the average man to farm, to provide for himself, to improve his self-esteem. And I heard the member for the city who echoed the words of respect, to allow persons to become self-actualized, to fulfill their dream. And it is projects such as these that would indeed provide that impetus so that the average man can indeed not only get off the block, because as the member for St. Michael East mentioned, this is not only about persons on the block. While we would like every single block to have a project that indeed that can benefit them and their families and turn to social and wholesome activities and to allow Barbados to remain a good place to live, work, do business, and raise a family. And that is what we aim to do as we enter these chambers, to provide the necessary policy guidelines, bills coming through Parliament, resolutions coming through Parliament to benefit the citizens of this country. And not only to benefit us in here. It is not about us in here. And the member for St. Michael South always echo these words, this slogan, people before politics. So we focus on our people, and that is why we are here with this resolution, because this is people-centered, focusing on our people, self-actualization, empowerment, enfranchisement of our people. Those are the words that we can use to describe this resolution today. But Mr. Speaker, while I was on my feet earlier today, I mentioned the whole aspect of wastage of food worldwide. And I just wanted to end off with the stats from the FAO that estimate that food loss and wastage costs the global economy at least US $2.6 trillion annually. And, you know, I sent the message this morning clearly, not only to supermarket owners, but to all persons engaging in farming, urban regeneration, and agriculture on the whole. Let's minimize wastage. There's a cost to wastage, and I just share with you the global cost from the FAO associated with wastage, $2.6 trillion US, trillion dollars per year associated with food wastage. Mr. Speaker, as I close, while we have started the urban regeneration prior to this project under not only Project CARE, but the feed program, we have started not only the urban regeneration through agriculture, the Lear's Land Lease project, but I share the sentiments echoed in here that we should use this project as a pilot for more community engagement in agriculture across Barbados. I heard the member for St. Michael's South Central who would like to see a similar resolution brought to this chamber for the land on the Pine Road. Am I correct, member for St. Philip South? And I say to her that within less than a month time, she should have that resolution in this parliament, because if we're serious about projects such as these, we have to give equal opportunity to Barbadians, not only in St. Michael Northwest, but in St. Philip, St. Thomas, Christchurch, St. Andrew, St. Michael Central. We have to give equal opportunity to the average man to indeed engage in farming. Because I think that the member for St. Michael South picked up on it when I mentioned the impact of NCDs, and I quoted some statistics on how this country is being impacted, not only this country, but worldwide. Cardiovascular diseases through NCDs, and other health challenges that come with eating badly. And if there's one thing that we should all aim to do, is live a healthy lifestyle. And whether it is through the Ministry of Education, providing healthy foods at the schools, whether it is through Project CARE, giving the green spaces where persons can farm, through vertical farming, greenhouses, or shade houses, or whether it is other technology that we will utilize, whether in the urban or the rural corridor. There's one common thread here that we all must seek to encourage across the length and breadth of this country: healthy lifestyles. But as I close, Mr. Speaker, my final comment will go to the young men and the young women in the community of Deacons that I frequent at times, those in Black Rock, where this land will be made available. We have come to this parliament to vest 3.35 acres of land in the community groups within Deacon And I know that the member for St. Michael Northwest is actively involved in this project. It was his brainchild, and I want to thank you, member. But I echo the sentiments as I close here. And if there's one thing I want the young men and women in that community to do, is to utilize this project to improve the social standing of that community. Create opportunities for the young men and women. Is 3.35 acres. It's a lot of land. So that there will be less idle time utilized by these young men and women on a daily basis. And they will more focus on productivity and producing food crops, whether root crops, whatever type of food that can indeed benefit the community. And that is true community engagement. You can produce, but allow the community to be a better community, a healthier community, as a result of these 3.35 acres that this government will vest in the community group within the constituency of St. Michael Northwest, and closer the community of Deacons Farm, Ferniehurst, and surrounding areas. So I end with that request, and I'm hoping it hasn't gone on deaf ears, because I know the good member for St. Michael Northwest has started. But we have some social challenges that we really need to address. And it is projects such as these, member for St. Michael Northwest, that will allow this government and Barbados to remain a good place to live, work, send school our children, and do business. And with those words, Mr. Speaker, I beg that this resolution now pass. I'm obliged to you.
The question is that this resolution do now pass. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This resolution stands passed.
The Committee of Government notices, sir.
Honourable member for Christchurch East Central.
Mr. Speaker, I am commanded to give notice of the resolution to adopt the report of the Standing Orders Committee.
You revert to government business. Order number 13, sir. In the name of the Honourable Acting Leader of the House, to move the passing of a resolution to adopt the report of the Standing Orders Committee.
Honourable member for Christchurch East Central.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Members will be aware of the standing committees to be established, and I now wish to nominate the following members.
You have to move the
My apologies. My apologies. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the adoption of the report of the Standing Orders Committee.
Beg second.
Question is that to move the adoption of the report of the Standing Order Committees. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, apologies. I beg to nominate the following members of the standing committees. To the Committee on Governance and Policy Matters, the member for Christchurch South, the member for St. Andrew, the member for St. James North, and the member for St. Lucie. For the Committee on Economic and Productive Sectors, the member for St. Michael West, the member for St. Philip North, the member for St. James South, and the member for St. Michael South Central. And for the Committee on Social Sector and the Environment, the member for St. George North, the member for the City of Bridgetown, the member for St. Thomas, and the member for St. Michael East. Second.
The question is that the aforementioned members be nominated to the respective standing committees. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned members are so nominated. Honourable Member for Christchurch East Central.
Yes, with that, Mr. Speaker, we've come to the end of today's session, and so I beg to move that the House be adjourned until Tuesday, the 9th of May at 10 o'clock in the forenoon.
Beg to second.
The question that this honourable chamber be adjourned until Tuesday, the 2nd day of May, 2023, at 10 a.m. in the forenoon. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Meeting, the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday, the 9th day of May, 2023, at 10 a.m. in the forenoon.